Hi guys, in today's video I will be discussing Witcher Season 1, and I know people want to see Season 2, but since I haven't talked on my channel about Season 1, I thought it would be a nice idea to share my thoughts on it, and then we'll dive into Season 2 in the later episode. So let's get into it. First off, let's talk about the cinematography. I really appreciate how creative most of the shots are. The show makes great use of tracking shots, dolly movements, tilts, arc shots, Dutch angles, and not to mention the really effective way it utilizes center framing, negative space, symmetry, and color. This variety of shots gives the show a nice flowing feel and makes for some really dynamic images. And another thing that I really appreciated were the establishing shots that are so great in scope, and they're done so well that you instantly recognize every single place and you know exactly where your characters are. They also manage to give very different feels and textures to every single establishing shot, so you get the feel of every single place so you don't confuse Sintra and Posada. And I really appreciate that. When I said at the beginning that the cinematography is very creative, I like to point out the fact that I really adore that the composition is very intentional, and the show makes great use of frame within a frame composition and the contrast between light and darkness in a shot. There's also great use of the elements in the sense that there's always fog, rain, wind, snow, and this creates such great atmosphere. This, coupled with music, sound design that are so well implemented, costumes and actors and camera movement, everything works in sync to create a very immersive world for watchers. And talking about the actors, the acting is great across the board. Are there moments when the acting or the lines are a bit over the top? Yes.
You're a dick. With balls. Balls I got from humans!
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I'm not going to be nitpicky about this stuff, and also when especially Geralt of Rivia is a bit over the top, a bit broody, I like it. I'm not taken out of the immersion because Henry Cavill is a bit over the top. I actually enjoy it. Also, I have to mention Jaskier, who's my favorite character from the books and the show as well. Joey Beatty does a really great job in portraying the character and really brings Jaskier to life, nailing his back and forth with Geralt throughout the show. And I really need to give Anya a shout out because she does such an exceptional job going from Yennefer when she's at the beginning and she hasn't had her transformation yet, and then Yennefer that's completely different, posture-wise, and the way she speaks, the way she moves herself, and how confident she is in herself. Also to note in this part, I absolutely adore the fact that the costumes feel that they've been through a lot. There's wear and tear on Geralt's shoulder pads. A lot of the times you can see it, and this I really appreciate because it helps with the immersion. It helps to make you feel like the world is actually very lived in. And because I've mentioned the a bit over the top moments, I have to mention the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest fault that the show has: the timeline and how it has affected the pacing overall. Because we get events out of order, some moments lose a lot of their impact when they happen so early on in the story. Calanthe and I's deaths being a couple of obvious examples, but also losing the clear through line of Geralt's connection with Ciri and him coming to accept the responsibility of protecting her is very muddy, precisely because the narrative is so chopped up and it all seems to be in service of the reveal that happens in episode 7, where we find out that Geralt was imprisoned in the dungeon the whole time. Because of it, episode 7 is the weakest of the season in my opinion, and plays more like a clip show that helps fill some gaps but is ultimately a bit of a filler than really helping progress the narrative in a meaningful way. Another gripe that I have with the whole timeline situation is the fact that it's not explained very well. We have such a complex world, like we have a bunch of different characters, we have a bunch of different political factions and different cities, and it's a lot of stuff to take in. And to add on top of it such a muddled timeline, it makes it even worse. And I am currently reading the series, and I still found it quite difficult to understand exactly what was going on and how things were placed in the timeline and everything. And if it would have been explained a bit better, I think it would have helped the show a lot. What affected the timeline so much was the fact that they wanted to introduce Ciri so early in the story. They could have introduced her later on, and you would have had time to meet up with Geralt and Yennefer and whatnot, and then introduce Ciri. But because we have 3 different timelines in just one episode, makes everything very, very confusing. On top of it, I have a lot of gripes with the whole timeline thing, is that the actors don't seem to be aged up a lot. For example, Calanthe looks the same throughout, and Jaskier as well. I know that Geralt and Yennefer would look the same, but if you have characters that can age up or change hairstyles or just look different to signify that it is a different timeline, it would have helped tremendously. What I also, back to the positives, what I really appreciate was the fact that it's very faithful to the books. And I know that probably when it appeared, it made a lot of fans not very happy with the adaptation because things have to be left out, things have to be modified. But I'm still off the Wheel of Time adaptation train wreck. And I'm very optimistic with The Witcher. I haven't seen season 2, so if things go bad there, I don't know. But I'm really happy with how it was adapted in the first season, like how faithful it was to the books. And positive, now negative, what I didn't appreciate of what they changed from the books was the fact that I didn't really like Ciri's plotline. It felt very redundant because we didn't have her go to Brokilon and meet Geralt, because we didn't have them meet up basically. There's no clear end goal for Ciri in season 1. She isn't really trying to find Geralt until the very end, and the Nilfgaardians aren't an immediate threat for large portions of the season. Because of that, we get a lot of meandering scenes of her and Dara kind of hanging out in different places. After a while, these scenes just become repetitive and kind of dull, and it slows down the pacing of the show significantly. And this is one of my biggest problems with the season, is that all the book readers, I hope all the book readers really loved the moment in Sword of Destiny at the end when Geralt is asked by Ciri when they meet up again if she's his destiny, and he says,
"You're much more than that, Cirilla."
And we didn't get that. Instead we got,
"Who is Yennefer?"
Why did that had to be there? Why did they introduce that? And it killed off a great moment between 2 characters that we all love. And talking about the whole Ciri Geralt situation that I didn't appreciate into the adaptation is also the fact that Geralt doesn't seem to fight off the destiny and try not to take Ciri under his wing. I know we got a few scenes, especially with him and Mousesack, but I would have appreciated more of him just defying the destiny. And but it's still, I feel like it's a bit of a nitpick in a sense, because I don't know, but I would have preferred to have them more explain how he doesn't want to take responsibility for the destiny and this child of surprise. Now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the monsters that we see throughout the show. And I have to say that they did a really good job with them mostly. I know The dragon isn't well loved. I personally like it, but objectively, yeah, it's not great. It's not. Most of the monster designs are very cool, but yet again, the CGI can be very uneven at times. And the fact that maybe the CGI isn't always done so well, I think it just adds to that little fairy tale like feel to the story. I don't know if it's just me subjectively that thinks this way, but I like it. Like, I really enjoyed seeing all the monsters in action and getting destroyed by Geralt. Talking about the action and the battle scenes, some of the action can be pretty up and down. Like, the highs are very, very high, like with the scene with Renfri. Everything feels very deliberate, like the choreography and the camera work feels very purposeful. And there are other scenes like when Geralt fights off those little monsters where it feels kind of choppy, but it's still very competent. And in the fight scenes, I really appreciated how they implemented the special effects and how the magic really interacts with the people and the props and the sets. It makes the world feel so much more immersive and the magic so much more believable. And talking about the fights, I really have to appreciate the stuntmen and the stunt coordinators. The Battle of Blaviken is incredible. Like, I was stunned. Like, that is such a great way to represent Geralt and to showcase him in the first episode. I know that this might be the best, I think it's the best battle of the whole season, but it's done so well and you really get to know Geralt, you really get to see Geralt and understand how great of a fighter a Witcher is. And another thing that I noticed in the battle with Renfri is how they implemented the whole story and they actually progressed the plot, and you get to see Henry. You get to see Geralt and Renfri talk and interact, and you see his motivations and everything. It's a scene that purposely moves forward Geralt's character, and it's great. Like, it's a great introduction for our main character. I love it. And another scene that I have to mention if I'm talking about this is the scene of Geralt fighting the Striga. Wow, I loved it. Like, I mean, there are moments where the Striga was a bit wonky looking and it was doing a bit too much of this, but I don't mind it at all because the special effects in that scene are great. Like, the way Geralt uses magic to fight the Striga is done so well and competently in the show. Like, they portrayed it really great. And this is a scene that is well beloved by people who've played the games and people who've read the books. Like, it's known. They did a great job bringing it to a third medium. And the last thing that I want to discuss is that even though like the exposition might throw you in the deep end, if you stick around and get through the muddled timeline and figure how things work, you'll be greatly rewarded. Like, the immersion that happens because there's so much exposition, there's so many things going on, and you're not spoon-fed. Like, they don't hold your hand and explain everything.
I saw the wraiths of Moorhawk over the channel this morning.
Yes, you mentioned, eh?
They're an omen of war.
The North has been at war since Nilfgaard took Ebbing. Legend is true. The Wild Hunt's years behind the curve.
The Nilfgaardian force crossed the Armor Pass.
Headed to Sodden if they're smart.
They really rely on the viewer, on the watcher, to figure things out. And I really love that because nowadays we get to see more movies or TV shows that really dumb their content down because they fear watchers wouldn't be interested. Also, I really love the nice subtle touches, like when Istred first meets Yennefer, he bites off a flower to open a portal, and later on, Yennefer bites a flower to lift up a stone. And I love the fact that if you pay attention to those two things, you understand why Tisaya knows that something is going on between Istred and Yennefer. And when she tells Yennefer, welcome back to Tor Lara, that's when everything clicks in. Like, she knew that because she did the very specific thing that Istred does to use chaos. And I just absolutely adore that we get to have these little very subtle moments that upon rewatches they're so gratifying. So my overall thoughts on season 1 of The Witcher is that I really like it. Like, it's, if I have to rate it, it's like an 8 out of 10 because it has its flaws. And now I'm really excited to see season 2 and see if they're as faithful to the books as they've been so far. And what did you guys think about season 1? Try not to spoil me on the whole series, like book series, because I'm on book 4, Time of Contempt. So be friendly in the comments. And I'm really curious to see what your guys' opinion is on season 1 and season 2. And did you like it? Did you dislike it? Let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye!